What I want to cover today in this video is how to get people to get it. That is, in many cases, you send someone subtle hints or you expect them to understand something, and then later on, you're disappointed because, surprise, surprise, they didn't understand it at all, or they just don't care. So the key question is, how do you get people to get it? That's what we're going to cover. So you've probably suffered from this situation at some point in your life, maybe once, maybe multiple times. But the key here is, you send someone a subtle message, and you expect them to get it, and you expect them to understand from the context, and they fail miserably at it. So they don't do what you were suggesting, or they don't understand the message that you were sending them. So what I want to cover are 3 problems that derive from sending these subtle hints, but also 3 techniques that you can use to mitigate these problems. So the 3 major problems with sending subtle hints are that, number 1, you assume that people are even listening. You assume that people care about what you're saying, or you assume that they understand the same thing as you. Let's start with the listening. That is, you assume that when you send a subtle hint that people are even listening in the first place. And here's the key. There can be 2 different types of people that can cause this problem. Maybe someone just doesn't care. They literally could not care less about what you're stating. So it's not a problem of sending a subtle hint or not. They literally don't care and they don't want to listen. Maybe they're in denial, or maybe there's something else going on, but they don't want to listen. Or it may be someone with the best of intentions, but they're just distracted. Maybe there's something going on in their life, maybe they're thinking of something else, but they just don't listen. And please realize that even when you talk very explicitly, and I'm an example of this, some people still have trouble listening. So the distinction here is the following. If you are sending subtle hints, there is a very high probability that people are not even listening in the first place, because they don't even listen to people who talk in an explicit manner. And that brings us to the second type of problem, which is you assume that somebody cares. So here's the key. When you're speaking to someone and you're asking a favor or you're communicating a message, maybe they really don't care about it. You need to realize that many people are transactional. If they don't see what's the advantage for them, they're not going to do what you say. And usually it's either greed or fear. Either they have something to gain for your message, or they have something to lose if they don't accept your message. If none of these 2 factors are incorporated into your message, there is a very high probability that people just don't care because they don't see what's in it for them. Now, naturally, some people are more open than others, and some people are more transactional than others. But at the end of the day, if you don't give the person a reason to care about your message or the favor that you're asking or whatever it is that you're pitching, well, they're not going to care. And that brings us to the 3rd problem, which is even if the person listens and even if they care, they may have understood something else from what you were stating. This is why it's important to always state explicitly what you need. Because if you send a subtle hint, very likely the person is going to interpret it in the way that they want. For example, if you're a boss telling one of your subordinates, hey, give me an update when you process this list of leads or this list of contacts. What does processing even mean? Is it when they add the information to a database? Is it when they clean the information? Is it when they contact these people, if they need to contact them? You need to realize that if there are doubts, the person is going to interpret the message in the way that is the most convenient for them. This is why it's important to very explicitly state what you're asking or what you mean, because otherwise people are just going to understand it in the way that's the most convenient possible for them. So these are usually the 3 major problems with sending subtle hints. But now let's talk about 3 simple techniques. So the first one is actually a mindset piece, which is you have to consider it always your responsibility to get the other side to understand your message. That is, a lot of people think that it's their responsibility to try, to send the message, and then whatever happens, it's not their fault. But the best communicators, what I call the institutional grade communicators, because usually these are hedge fund managers that raise institutional money, which means that they need to be the best of the best at what they do, and communication is a big part of it. So the best communicators always consider it their responsibility not only to send the message, but to make sure that it's successfully received on the other side. And this means not only having the actual message and sending it, asking a favor, asking for money, making a statement, whatever it is, but also tailoring it to the person's needs, diagnosing their possible objections, dealing with the objections, making sure that the person commits in some way or another, and whatever else is necessary in order to make sure that they really understand the message. Now, naturally, you can use a lot of sophisticated communication techniques here, but I'm talking about the mindset. You should view it as your responsibility, not just to drop the communication and then whatever happens, happens. No, you should make it your responsibility to make sure that this little packet of information reaches the other side and that the other person accepts it at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how much they try to ignore it, to deny it, or to misunderstand it. You have to make sure that they understand the true message that you're trying to convey. And this is very powerful because if you consider that something is outside your hands, that it's somebody else's responsibility, then there's nothing that you can do about it, and you almost give up immediately. But if you think that it's your responsibility, even if it isn't, there's always something that you can do. And you always try harder, you always make more effort, and you always get better results at the end of the day. Our second technique is to always use what is called low context communication. So there's this very interesting book called The Culture Map by Erin Meyer, and it talks about how different cultures communicate in different ways. But in specific, there's a dichotomy between what is called low context communication and high context communication. So low context communicators always say things explicitly. These are cultures like France, like Germany. They literally state, this is what I expect from you, this is what I want you to do, period. And then you have cultures like Japan or the UK, which have high context communication. That is, they don't say things explicitly a lot of the time, they expect the other side to understand it and to read between the lines. So here's the thing, using high context communication seems very sophisticated and very classy, and it is. But the problem is, people understand you a lot less because they can't take a hint. You need to understand that even if you are very intelligent and very sophisticated, well, the other side may not be at all. So the only way to address this is to always use low context communication. Sure, you are going to seem a little bit more rough, a little bit less sophisticated by stating explicitly everything you need, but it's the only way to make sure that there are no mistakes. It's telling someone explicitly, this is what I need from you. These are the resources that I need you to allocate. This is what I need you to do until the end of the week. This is the work that needs to go into the report, period. By using low context communication, there's never going to be any doubt as to what the other side needs to do or needs to understand. And finally, the third technique is to always confirm with the person what they think that should be done. That is, if you give them a message or if you give them a task or whatever it is, you always confirm with them afterwards, hey, can you just repeat back to me, or can you confirm, what did you understand from what I asked, or what did you understand from this message? This is good because on one hand, it tests whether you are aligned with the person, but also, if they have the message right, the fact that they're saying it in their own words consolidates that message. This is very useful if you're asking for favors, by the way. It's very good to get someone to state something in their own words. And funnily enough, this is something that you see in TV shows or movies where there's two characters that have different intentions, right? And then one of them is surprised because they realize that the other person wants something else, and then they stop and they ask, hey, what do you think is happening here? And despite the comedical situation, this is actually a great persuasion technique. You're literally asking the person, what do you think that you should do, or what did you understand from this message? And if they state something different from what you wanted, then you know you have a problem. It's great to use after the communication to make sure that they understood what the communication was. It's very good because instead of telling the person what they should do, or instead of correcting them, it's a very polite way to ask about what they think. And then, if what they think does not match the message, then you can say it very politely. So usually, these are the three main problems with sending subtle hints and three techniques that can help with the issue. In terms of problems, you need to understand that the person may not be listening, they may not care, or they may listen and care, but may have misunderstood what you were stating. Then, in terms of the techniques, first of all, you want to consider the reception of the message is your responsibility. Remember, institutional grade communications. Then, you want to always use low context communication. Even if it doesn't seem very classy and sophisticated, just tell them specifically what you need them to do, or what you need them to understand from the message. And finally, double check with the person what it is that they understood, or what it is that they think that they need to do. It's a very polite way, in a non-invasive way, to check whether your message was received or not. If you've enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing, and don't forget to check out the channel because there's a lot of other communication, persuasion, and negotiation tools, both for this purpose, but for many other purposes in life. Thank you so much for watching.